My daughter-in-law handed me disownment papers at dinner. Then I slid my $7.5 million contract across. I was folding laundry when the first crack showed up. Not a loud crack, not the kind you notice right away. More like a hairline fracture in a windshield. You don't see it until the light hits a certain way. Then you realize the whole thing was already broken. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of Tuesday that doesn't ask anything of you. Cool enough for a cardigan. The leaves were turning, but not all the way. I had my hands in a basket of towels my daughter-in-law had dropped off the week before. She never did her own laundry. That should have been the first thing, but I was happy to do it. I was always happy to do it. My name is Margaret. Most people call me Max, but you can call me whatever you want. I am 68 years old. I have 3 children, 2 daughters and 1 son. The son is the one who married her. Her name is Vanessa. She is 42 years old. She has long dark hair and thin wrists and a smile that never quite reaches her eyes. I noticed that early, but I told myself I was being judgmental. Mothers of sons are always judgmental. That is what everyone says. So I swallowed my instincts and opened my front door and let her in. I let her into my home. I let her into my family. I let her into my bank accounts. That last part is what destroyed me. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, or what felt like the beginning. The real beginning was 40 years ago when I married a man named Richard, Rich for short. He was tall and quiet and worked in commercial real estate. He had steady hands and a steady paycheck and a steady way of looking at the world that made me feel safe. I was 28, he was 31. We met at a bar in Naperville, a place called the Tap House. It is gone now, torn down for a parking garage. That feels like a metaphor, but I am too old to figure out what it means. We had 3 children in 4 years. Jennifer, then Michael, then little Amy. Jennifer was the responsible one. Michael was the golden boy. Amy was the surprise. They grew up in a split-level house on a cul-de-sac. We had a swing set in the backyard and a labradoodle named Gus and a minivan that smelled like goldfish crackers and wet sneakers. I thought I had built something solid. I thought I had done the work. I got up at 5:30 every morning for 20 years to pack lunches and iron shirts and make sure the science fair projects had trifold boards and the soccer cleats were not still caked with mud from last week. I volunteered at the school book fair. I hosted Thanksgiving for 15 people every year. I drove my mother to her chemotherapy appointments while also driving my kids to piano lessons and orthodontist appointments and SAT prep courses. I did it all. I did it all without complaining because that is what you do. That is what we did. Then the kids grew up. Jennifer became a nurse. Michael went into finance. Amy became a teacher. They all moved away. Not far. Chicago, Oak Brook, Evanston. Close enough for Sunday dinners, but far enough that I felt the empty rooms. Rich and I rattled around in that split level for 10 more years. Then Rich got sick. Pancreatic cancer. It took him in 11 months. I watched the man I loved turn from solid oak to dry leaves. He died in our bed on a Thursday morning. The hospice nurse had stepped out to get coffee. I was alone with him when he took his last breath. I held his hand. It was still warm for a long time after his heart stopped. That is a thing nobody tells you. The hand stays warm. I was 59 years old, a widow, a mother, a grandmother. My oldest grandchild was 7. My youngest was just born. I thought the hard part was over. I thought I had survived the worst thing. The worst thing was still coming. It was just wearing a different face. The first year after Witch died was a fog. I sold the split level. Too many stairs, too many memories. I bought a smaller house in Downers Grove, a ranch style with a fenced backyard and a little deck where I could drink my coffee in the morning. The mortgage was paid off because Rich had been smart about life insurance. There was also an investment account he left me, about $700,000, plus the house, plus a small pension from his firm, plus Social Security. I was not rich, but I was comfortable. I could travel. I could help my kids. I could spoil my grandkids. I could live another 20 years without worrying about money. That is where Vanessa came in. Vanessa was Michael's wife. Michael met her at a bar in River North, a rooftop place. He was 32, she was 29. She was a real estate agent. She wore expensive shoes and talked about square footage like other people talk about poetry. I did not dislike her at first. She was pretty and smart, and Michael was crazy about her. They got married at a golf club in Lake Geneva. The wedding cost $80,000. Michael paid for most of it, but I contributed 15. I was happy to do it. He was my only son. His father would have wanted him to have a nice wedding. That is what I told myself every time I wrote a check. The cracks started small. Vanessa forgot to send a thank you note for the wedding gift. She forgot to invite me to her birthday dinner. She called me by my first name instead of Mom or Margaret. That last one drove me crazy, but I never said anything because I did not want to be the difficult mother-in-law. I had seen those women, the ones who poison every holiday with passive-aggressive comments about the turkey being dry or the grandchildren being too thin. I did not want to be that woman. So I smiled and said, Margaret is fine, and I let her treat me like a distant aunt instead of family. Then the babies came, 2 grandsons, Logan and Carter. Beautiful boys, blonde hair like Michael, blue eyes like Rich. I held them in the hospital and cried because I could feel my husband in their little fingers. Vanessa watched me cry with a strange expression on her face. Not warmth, not annoyance either, something in between, like she was calculating something. I told myself I was imagining it. New mothers are tired. New mothers are protective. I was reading too much into a tired face. I helped with the boys. Of course I helped. That is what grandmothers do. I watched them 2 days a week while Vanessa went back to work. I changed diapers and made bottles and sang lullabies. I bought them clothes and toys and books. I opened a college savings account for each of them. $5,000 to start. I told Michael about it. He said, Mom, you do not have to do that. I said, I want to. He hugged me. It was a good hug. I thought we were okay. I thought we were a family. The cracks kept spreading. Vanessa started making comments about money, little ones. She would say things like, wow, Margaret, your house is so nice for one person. Or, it must be amazing to have no mortgage. Or, you are so lucky you do not have to work. I would laugh and change the subject, but she kept circling back. She asked me once how much life insurance Rich left me. I was loading the dishwasher after a family dinner. The question came out of nowhere. I said, I do not really talk about money. She smiled and said, of course, I understand. Then she asked again 3 weeks later. I gave her a number. I do not know why. I guess I trusted her. I guess I thought she was family. $700,000, plus the house, plus the pension, plus Social Security. She did the math in her head. I could see her doing it. Her eyes went somewhere else for a second. Then she smiled and said, that is wonderful, Margaret. You worked so hard. You deserve to enjoy it. That was the moment. If I had a time machine, I would go back to that dinner party and slap myself across the face. But I do not have a time machine. None of us do. So I just kept living my life. I kept babysitting. I kept buying birthday presents. I kept writing checks for school fundraisers and soccer fees and summer camp deposits. I did not mind. I had the money. They were my grandkids. That is what the money was for. That is what I told myself. Jennifer started warning me, my oldest, the nurse. She has always been the one with the radar. She called me one night after she had been to Michael and Vanessa's house for dinner. She said, Mom, I need to tell you something. I said, what? She said, Vanessa was asking Michael about your will, right there at the dinner table, in front of the boys. Michael got uncomfortable and changed the subject, but Vanessa kept pushing. She wanted to know if you had updated it since Dad died. I said I had. Jennifer was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Mom, please be careful. I said, careful about what? She said, about Vanessa. She is not asking because she loves you. She is asking because she wants to know when the money becomes hers. I defended her. Of course I did. I said, Jennifer, you are being paranoid. Vanessa is a mother with 2 young children. She is worried about the future. There is nothing wrong with that. Jennifer said, okay, Mom, but her voice was tight, the way a nurse's voice gets when they know the patient is in denial. I should have listened, but I did not. The next year, my sister Carol died. She was my only sibling, 3 years older. We were not close, but we were not distant either. She lived in Florida. She never married, no kids. She left me her condo in Sarasota and about $400,000 in investments. I was her only family. It was a surprise. She had never talked about money. I cried when the lawyer called, not because of the money, because Carol was gone, and I had not called her on her last birthday. That guilt sits with me still. But the money was real. Suddenly, I had over $1 million, plus 2 houses, plus the pension. I was not just comfortable anymore, I was wealthy. I told Michael and Vanessa over dinner. It was a mistake. I see that now. But at the time I was excited. I wanted to share good news with my family. I wanted them to know that their mother was okay, that the future was secure, that there would be help for the grandkids' college, and maybe a down payment on a bigger house for them someday. I said all of that. I said, I want to help you. Vanessa's eyes did that calculation thing again, but this time the calculation was bigger. I could almost hear the numbers clicking behind her face. Michael squeezed my hand and said, Mom, that is amazing. He looked happy, genuinely happy. Or maybe he was just a better actor than I gave him credit for. That is the part that hurts the most. Not Vanessa. She was always a snake. The real betrayal came from Michael, my son, my only son, the boy I carried for 9 months while his father worked late, and I threw up every morning and still went to my job as a dental hygienist. The boy who learned to ride a bike in our driveway and scraped his knee and came running to me because he knew I would kiss it and make it better. The boy who cried at his father's funeral and held my hand so tight I thought he would break my fingers. That boy, he was in on it. Maybe not from the beginning, but he got there. He got there because Vanessa wanted something, and he wanted to keep her happy, and I was just the wallet that made that possible. The plan started small. Vanessa suggested I sell the house in Downers Grove and move into a smaller place, a condo maybe, something easier to maintain. She said it with such concern, such fake sweetness. She said, Margaret, you are not getting any younger. Why do you not sell the house and put the money somewhere safe? Then you can travel. You can enjoy yourself. You do not need all this space. I thought about it. The house was big for one person. 2,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, a backyard I never used except to watch the squirrels. The stairs were starting to bother my knees. Maybe she was right. Maybe I should downsize. I talked to Jennifer about it. She said, Mom, do not sell that house. That house is your security. I said, it is just a house. She said, it is paid off. It is yours. Nobody can take it from you. If you sell it and put the money in an account, that money becomes liquid. Liquid money is easier to lose. I should have listened to Jennifer, but Vanessa was already in my ear. She was already visiting more often, bringing the boys, letting me play with them while she sat at my kitchen table with her laptop. She said she was working. Maybe she was. Or maybe she was already moving pieces on a chessboard I did not even know I was playing. I sold the house in the spring. I got $820,000 after fees. I moved into a 2-bedroom condo in a building with an elevator and a pool. It was nice. It was modern. It had a balcony where I could watch the sunset. Vanessa helped me pack. She was so helpful, so present. She labeled boxes and called the movers and ordered pizza for lunch. I remember sitting on the floor of my empty living room eating a slice of pepperoni and thinking how lucky I was to have a daughter-in-law who cared so much. I almost cried from gratitude. She saw my face and she smiled. That smile, I will never forget that smile. It was the smile of someone who has already won. I just did not know it yet. The money from the house went into an investment account. Vanessa recommended a financial advisor, a friend of hers from college, a man named Derek with a firm handshake and a tie that cost more than my first car. I met with him twice. He seemed professional. He talked about diversification and risk tolerance and long-term growth. I signed some papers. I do not remember what they said. I trusted Vanessa. I trusted Derek. I trusted that the world was still a place where people did not steal from 65-year-old widows. I was wrong. The next 2 years were good, or they felt good. I babysat Logan and Carter all the time. I took them to the park and the zoo and the museum. I bought them ice cream and let them stay up past their bedtime. I was the fun grandma, the one who spoiled them and sent them home with sugar rushes. Vanessa loved that. She loved having a free babysitter. She loved having a free ATM. She loved having a mother-in-law who asked for nothing in return. She started asking for things, little things at first. A new stroller, a year of swim lessons, a contribution to a family vacation in Florida. I said yes to everything. Why would I say no? I had the money. They were my family. That is what the money was for. I told myself that over and over. That is what the money was for. Then the requests got bigger. Vanessa wanted to renovate their kitchen. Their house was nice, but the kitchen was outdated. She wanted granite countertops and stainless steel appliances and a farmhouse sink. The whole thing would cost $60,000. She asked me to pay for half. I wrote a check for $30,000. Michael hugged me. Vanessa said, "Thank you, Margaret." She did not call me mom. She never called me mom, but I had stopped hoping for that. Margaret was fine. I was just happy to be included. Then they needed a new car. Vanessa's SUV was falling apart. She wanted a brand new Toyota Highlander, $45,000. Could I help with the down payment? I wrote a check for $15,000. Then the boys needed to go to a private preschool, $12,000 a year. Could I cover it? I wrote a check for $12,000. Then Michael's business had a cash flow problem. He was a financial advisor. Ironic, right? A financial advisor with a cash flow problem? He needed $20,000 to cover payroll. I wrote a check for $20,000. None of this raised alarms for me because I thought I was helping my family. I thought I was being generous. I thought I was building a legacy. I thought when I was gone, my children would remember how I helped them, how I gave without keeping score, how I loved them without conditions. That is what mothers do. That is what we have always done. We give and we give and we give until there is nothing left. Then we give some more. Jennifer started pulling away. She stopped coming to Sunday dinners. She stopped bringing her kids to visit. She called less often. When I asked her what was wrong, she said nothing, but her voice was cold, the way it gets when she is holding back something big. I should have pushed harder. I should have asked her to tell me the truth, but I was afraid of what she might say, so I let her drift. I told myself she was busy. She had her own life, her own family, her own problems. I did not want to be a burden. That is the tragedy of getting old. You spend your whole life being needed. Then one day you realize you are the one who needs, and that feels like weakness. So you pretend you do not need anything. You pretend you are fine eating dinner alone. You pretend you are fine watching TV alone. You pretend you are fine sleeping in a bed that is too big and too quiet, because you will not admit that you are lonely, that you are scared, that you lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering who will take care of you when you cannot take care of yourself. I pretended for a long time. The real explosion came on a Sunday, a cold Sunday in November, the kind of day where the sky is gray and the wind cuts through your coat, and you just want to stay inside with a cup of tea and a blanket. But Vanessa had invited me to dinner. She said she wanted to talk about the future. She said it with a smile. That smile. I should have known something was wrong, because she never invited me to dinner. I was always the one who cooked. I was always the one who hosted. But she said she wanted to do something nice for me. She said I had done so much for them, and it was time to give back. I drove to their house in Oakbrook, a big colonial with a 3-car garage and a front door that cost more than my first wedding dress. The house I had helped them buy. The house I had helped them renovate. The house where my grandchildren slept in beds I had paid for. I parked in the driveway and sat in my car for a minute. The heat was on. The radio was playing something soft. I remember looking at my hands on the steering wheel. They were old hands, veins and spots and knuckles that ached when the weather changed. I thought about Rich. I thought about how he used to hold my hands and say they were the most beautiful hands he had ever seen. I wondered if he could see me now. I wondered if he was ashamed of me. I wondered if I was ashamed of myself. I went inside. The house smelled like roasting chicken and something else, something formal. Vanessa had set the dining room table with her good china, the stuff she only used for Christmas and Easter. There were candles, there were cloth napkins, there was a centerpiece of white flowers that looked expensive. Michael was there. The boys were at a friend's house. It was just the 3 of us. Vanessa kissed my cheek. Michael hugged me. They were both wearing nice clothes, like they were going to a job interview or a funeral. We sat down. Vanessa served the food. She was a good cook. I will give her that. The chicken was moist. The potatoes were creamy. The wine was a red blend from Napa. I drank 2 glasses because I was nervous. I did not know why I was nervous. It was just dinner with my son and his wife. But something was wrong. The air was too still. The conversation was too careful. Michael kept looking at Vanessa, checking her face, like she was holding a leash and he was waiting for her to tug. After dinner, Vanessa cleared the plates. She said she had dessert, but first she wanted to talk about something important.
She went to the kitchen and came back with a manila envelope, thick, heavy, the kind of envelope lawyers use. She placed it on the table in front of me. Then she sat down and folded her hands and looked at me with that smile, that horrible smile. She said, "Margaret, we need to talk about your estate plan." I said, "What about it?" She said, "We have been doing some research, Michael and I, and we think it is time to make some changes, for the benefit of the family, for the benefit of the boys." Michael was staring at his plate. He would not look at me. His face was red, not from the wine, from shame. I could smell the shame on him. It was thick as smoke. Vanessa opened the envelope. She pulled out a stack of papers, legal papers, stapled and tabbed and flagged with little yellow sticky notes. She slid them across the table toward me. She said, "This is a petition for guardianship and conservatorship. It says you are no longer capable of managing your own affairs.
It says you are showing signs of cognitive decline. It asks the court to appoint Michael as your legal guardian. It gives him control over your finances, your property, your medical decisions, everything." I did not understand at first. The words would not organize themselves in my head. Cognitive decline, guardianship, conservatorship. These were words for other people, old people, sick people, not me. I was 68 years old. I still did my own taxes. I still mowed my own lawn before I sold the house. I still drove myself to the grocery store and the bank and the doctor. I was fine. I was completely fine. I looked at Michael. I said, "Is this true?" He did not answer. Vanessa answered for him. She said, "Michael loves you, Margaret. We both do. But we have noticed some things. You forget appointments. You repeat yourself. You left the stove on last time you babysat. Logan noticed. He is 7 years old and he noticed." I said, "That is not true. I did not leave the stove on." Vanessa said, "The boys are worried about you. We are all worried about you. This is for your own good. You will still live in your condo. You will still see the boys. But Michael will handle the money. He will pay your bills. He will make sure you are safe. You do not have to worry about anything anymore." I looked at Michael again. I said, "Michael, look at me." He looked at me. His eyes were wet. There was a muscle twitching in his jaw. He said, "Mom, I am sorry. It is just, we think it is for the best." That was when I started to understand. Not fully, not yet, but the edges were becoming clear, like a photograph developing in a darkroom. This was not about my safety. This was about my money. They wanted my house. They wanted my investments. They wanted my pension. They wanted everything Rich and I had built over 40 years. And they were going to take it by telling a court that I was senile, that I could not take care of myself, that I needed my son to hold my hand and sign my checks and decide when I went to the nursing home. I said, "I am not signing this." Vanessa's smile flickered, just for a second. Then it came back. She said, "Margaret, you do not have a choice. We have affidavits from your doctor, from your neighbors, from the staff at your condo building. They all say the same thing. You are confused, you are forgetful, you are a danger to yourself." I said, "I am not confused. I am not forgetful. I am not a danger to myself. You are lying." Vanessa said, "We are not lying. We are protecting you. If you do not sign voluntarily, we will go to court. We will let a judge decide, and the judge will read the affidavits. The judge will listen to the witnesses, and the judge will give Michael anyway, but it will be expensive. It will be stressful. It will be ugly. Is that what you want, Margaret? Do you want to put your son through that?" I looked at Michael, my son, my only son. The boy I had breastfed and bathed and driven to soccer practice and paid for college and given a down payment for his first house and bailed out of a cash flow crisis and loved every single day of his life without condition. He was sitting there in his nice shirt with his wet eyes and his twitching jaw, and he would not look at me. He would not defend me. He would not say, "Mom, of course I am not doing this." He just sat there like a puppet with Vanessa's hand up his back. That was when the real betrayal hit me. Not the papers, not the lies, not the plan to steal everything I had. The real betrayal was Michael, my son. He had chosen her. He had chosen her over me. And not just chosen her, he had agreed to paint me as a senile old woman, to strip me of my dignity, to lock me out of my own life.
all so they could take my money and spend it on granite countertops and private school tuition and vacations in Florida. I did not cry. I wanted to cry. My chest was on fire. My hands were shaking. My throat was closing up. But I did not cry. I would not give them the satisfaction. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. The sound was loud in that quiet dining room. I picked up the manila envelope. I looked at Vanessa. I looked at Michael. I said, "You will not get away with this." Vanessa said, "We already have." I walked out. I got in my car. I drove home. I do not remember the drive. I do not remember the traffic lights or the turns or the neighborhoods I passed.
I remember parking in my garage and sitting in the dark with the engine off. I remember the silence, the kind of silence that is not empty, the kind of silence that is full of everything you have lost and everything you are about to lose. I called Jennifer. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. She answered on the second ring. She said, "Mom, what is wrong?" I told her everything, the papers, the affidavits, the plan, the look on Michael's face. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I told you." I said, "I know." She said, "I told you to be careful." I said, "I know." She said, "Do you have a lawyer?" I said, "No." She said, "You need a lawyer, the best one you can find. Do not talk to Michael. Do not talk to Vanessa. Do not sign anything. Do not answer the door. I am coming over tomorrow." She came over at 7 in the morning. She brought coffee and bagels and a yellow legal pad. She sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Lawyers, financial advisors, private investigators. She said, "We need to fight this." I said, "I do not know if I have the strength." She said, "Mom, you have to. If you do not fight, they will win. They will take everything, and then they will put you in a home. Not a nice one either, the cheapest one they can find. You will spend your last years eating mushy vegetables and wearing a diaper, while Vanessa drives the car you paid for and sends the boys to the college you saved for. Is that what you want?" I said no. She said, "Good. Then drink your coffee. We have work to do." The next 3 months were the worst of my life. Worse than Rich dying. Worse than my mother's cancer. Worse than any pain I had ever known. Because this pain came from my own blood, my own son. And every day I had to wake up and remember that he had tried to erase me, to make me invisible, to turn me into a problem that needed to be solved with paperwork. I found a lawyer. Her name was Diane. She was 55 years old, with gray hair and glasses, and the kind of voice that does not ask permission. She specialized in elder law. She had seen this before. She told me it happened all the time. Adult children turning on their parents, forging signatures, isolating them from friends, manipulating doctors into writing false reports. She said the courts were getting better at spotting it, but it was still a fight, a long, expensive fight. The affidavits Vanessa had collected were mostly lies. My doctor said he never signed anything. Someone had forged his name. My neighbors said they had never complained about me. The staff at my condo building said they had never expressed concern. Vanessa had fabricated everything. But that did not matter. The case was already filed. The court had already assigned a guardian ad litem, a social worker named Brenda, who came to my condo and asked me questions for 3 hours. She asked me what year it was and who the president was, and how much money I had in my checking account. I answered every question correctly. She asked me if I felt safe. I said no, not because I was confused, because my son was trying to steal my life. Brenda wrote a report. The report said I was competent. The report said I did not need a guardian. The report said the petition was without merit. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought the judge would read the report and dismiss the case, and Vanessa and Michael would slink away in shame. But that is not how the legal system works. They had filed a case. They had a right to be heard. The judge scheduled a hearing, a trial to determine whether I was senile enough to need my son to control my money. I sat in that courtroom on a cold January morning. The benches were wood, hard and unforgiving. The windows were high and narrow. The light that came through them was gray and thin. I wore a navy blue dress that Jennifer picked out.
She said, "Dress like you are going to church, like you are respectable, like you are not the crazy old woman they are trying to make you out to be." Michael and Vanessa sat on the other side of the room. They had their own lawyer, a man with a bow tie and a face like a weasel. Vanessa was wearing a black dress and pearls. She looked like she was going to a funeral. Maybe she was. The funeral of her conscience. Michael looked terrible, hollow, like someone had carved out his insides and left the shell. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to hate him so badly. But all I felt was a deep, aching grief. The kind of grief you feel when someone you love dies. But Michael was not dead. He was sitting 20 feet away from me, and he might as well have been on the moon. The judge was a woman. Maybe 50, maybe 60, it was hard to tell. She had short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked tired, the way judges look when they have seen too many families destroy each other over money. She called the case. The lawyers stood up. They made their arguments. The weasel with the bow tie said I was a vulnerable elderly woman being manipulated by my daughter, Jennifer. He said Jennifer was the one with the real cognitive decline. He had no evidence, he just said it. Like saying it made it true. Diane stood up and presented Brenda's report. She presented my bank records showing I had paid my bills on time for 30 years. She presented letters from my friends and neighbors saying I was sharp as a tack. She presented a video I had recorded of myself cooking dinner and balancing my checkbook and naming all the presidents in order. The judge listened. She did not react. She just listened. When the lawyers were done, she looked at Michael. She said, "Young man, why are you doing this?" Michael looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at the table. Michael said, "I am just worried about my mother." The judge said, "Your mother has a clean bill of health from a court-appointed social worker. She has no history of dementia.
She has no history of financial mismanagement. She has friends who say she is fine. She has a daughter who says she is fine. What exactly are you worried about?" Michael did not answer. The judge said, "I am dismissing this case with prejudice. That means you cannot file it again. I am also ordering you to pay your mother's legal fees, every single dollar. And I am referring your wife to the state bar for possible disciplinary action regarding the forged affidavits. You should be ashamed of yourself, both of you." The gavel came down. The sound echoed off the walls. Vanessa's face went white. Michael started to cry. Not quiet tears, loud, ugly sobs. The kind of crying you do when you have lost everything and you know it is your own fault. I watched him cry and I felt nothing. That is the worst part. I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not relief. Just a cold, empty space where my love for him used to be. I walked out of the courtroom. Jennifer was waiting in the hallway. She hugged me. She was crying. I was not. I could not cry. The tears were there somewhere, but they would not come. They were trapped behind a wall I did not know I had built. We went back to my condo. Jennifer made tea. We sat on my balcony. The air was cold, but the sun was out. It was the first sunny day in weeks. Jennifer said, "It is over, Mom. You won." I said, "I do not feel like I won. I feel like I lost my son." Jennifer said, "You did not lose him. He lost you. There is a difference." I am not sure there is a difference. That was 3 years ago. I am 68 now, 69 in 2 months. I live in the same condo, the same balcony, the same elevator that smells like somebody's meatloaf. I still have my money, most of it anyway. The legal fees were expensive, even with Michael paying most of them. I still have my house in Sarasota. I rent it out now. The income helps. I still have my pension, my Social Security, my investments. I am fine. I am more than fine. I am comfortable. But I am alone. Michael and Vanessa moved. I do not know where. Somewhere in Arizona, I think. They took the boys, Logan and Carter, my grandsons, the boys I changed diapers for, the boys I taught to ride bikes, the boys I read bedtime stories to while they fell asleep on my chest. I have not seen them in 3 years. Vanessa sends a card at Christmas, a generic card, the kind you buy in a box of 24. She signs it from Michael, Vanessa, Logan, and Carter. No personal note, no love, no nothing, just the names, like we are strangers, like I never existed. I have tried to reach out to Michael. I have called, I have written letters, I have sent emails. He does not respond. One time he answered. It was 2 in the morning. I don't know why I called. I could not sleep.
He answered and said hello, and I said, "Michael, it's Mom." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, I cannot talk to you. It hurts too much." I said, "What hurts?" He said, "Everything." Then he hung up. I called back.
The phone rang and rang. Then it went to voicemail. I left a message. I said, "Michael, I forgive you. Please call me back." He never did. I do not know if I actually forgive him. I said the words. I meant them in the moment. But forgiveness is not a light switch. It is not something you turn on and off. It is more like a door that you keep opening, even though the wind keeps slamming it shut. I keep opening the door. I keep hoping Michael will walk through. But the door stays open, and the hallway stays empty, and I am learning to live with that. Jennifer comes over every Sunday. She brings her kids, my other grandchildren, Olivia and Jack. They are 12 and 9. They do not know the whole story. They know there was a fight. They know Uncle Michael does not come around anymore. They know Grandma Mags gets sad sometimes. They do not know the details. I hope they never know the details. Some things are too heavy for children to carry. I have thought about selling the condo, moving somewhere new, starting over. But I am 68 years old. Starting over is for young people, people with energy, people with hope. I am not sure I have either of those things anymore. I have my health, I have my money, I have Jennifer. That is enough. It has to be enough. But some nights the silence is too loud. Some nights I sit on my balcony and watch the lights in the other windows, and I wonder what the other families are doing. Are they eating dinner together? Are they watching a movie? Are they arguing about something stupid that will be forgotten by morning? I do not know. I will never know. I am just an old woman in a condo with a balcony that faces a parking lot. Rich's picture is on my nightstand. He is young in the picture, 30 maybe. His hair is brown and thick. He is wearing a flannel shirt and smiling at something off camera. I talk to him sometimes. I know that sounds crazy. I know that is exactly the thing Vanessa would use as evidence that I am losing my mind. But I do it anyway. I say, "Rich, I miss you." I say, "Rich, I am sorry." I say, "Rich, our son tried to destroy me, and I do not know where I went wrong." He does not answer. He never answers. But I like to think he can hear me. I like to think he is somewhere, watching, waiting, wishing he could hold my hand one more time. I have started writing letters to Logan and Carter. I will probably never send them, but I write them anyway. I tell them about their grandfather. I tell them about the time their father caught a fish in the backyard pond. I tell them about the Christmas when Jennifer put tinsel in her hair, and we could not.